Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, and this brewery are one of the older and more established breweries in the country, and actually one of the first ones that I discovered when I moved over to Sweden back in 2015. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that we have had one or two times from them before. The previous examples of it have been very nice, and it's a style that I've been enjoying quite a lot of recently from different breweries across the world actually. So fingers crossed this is another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Hedemora, which is in Dalarna county, Dalarna's lane, to the northwest of Stockholm, about halfway up Sweden, I guess we could say. And for this review, we are going to return to Oppigårds Bryggeri once again. So this is yet another beer from their Heritage Collection, number 6 apparently. It's called the Hedamara Lager. It comes in at 5.3% ABV, and I think you know what style this one is. So yeah, really curious to see what this one has in store for us. One thing I would say about Oppigårds at the moment is the releases are a little bit strange because they don't seem to release through the Lokal Småskaligt, and I've not seen them in the Tillfälligt assortment either actually, so I'm really not sure exactly when this beer was being released. There is obviously the potential that I've just missed them. I've not been paying full attention to things like that, but I actually have no idea when this beer was released, but I tend to find out through Facebook when Oppigårds have released new beers. But it's just a bit annoying because obviously if I knew they were releasing stuff, I would get them as part of my local Småskaligt orders at the beginning of every month. But yeah, regardless, it's nice to return to these guys once again. I think it's been about 3 months or so since I last had a beer from them, so curious to see what this one has in store for us. From the Heritage Collection, I reviewed the Pilsner, and I've also reviewed the Dunkel as well, but I'm sure I lost the Dunkel video due to a corrupt memory card, unfortunately, and I don't think they do the Dunkel anymore, so I'll need to keep an eye out and see if they re-release that one. But yeah, the Heritage Collection that these guys are doing is pretty nice actually. But yeah, curious to see how it turns out, like I said, so let's crack on with the review. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Oppigårds Bryggeri before, and there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I'm reviewing for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would recommend. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Oppigårds Bryggeri once again then, on to my brewery notes. So Oppigårds Bryggeri, as I've told you before, were founded back in 2003 in Hedemora, which is in Dalarna county to the northwest of Stockholm. It's not too far away from Borlänge or Falun actually. But the brewery sits on a 250-year-old farm, the Falkström family farm, and the original brewery was in a small wooden building which was constructed back in 1896. And this space was originally used for flax dressing, but also for their great-grandfather's metal smithing business. But all of the beers were originally brewed in this old building, but they added a new malt house, and these days they've got a new and very shiny brewery from what I understand. But like I say, the company was founded back in 2003 by Björn Falkström, and he basically wanted to revive the family farm, but also to revive the tradition of the old Swedish farmhouse ales. And these beers were, of course, the norm in Sweden until, you know, the modern kind of generic lagers took over in the 1800s, and this made the farmhouse beers largely unprofitable for the farmers, and they just stopped brewing them. But the brewery became very popular. In the early years, their beers gained a good reputation, and if you do want to try some solid old school craft beers actually, you know, the likes of the Turbo Stout and the Turbo Double IPA, those are really nice, you know, sort of 2010 era-ish sort of IPAs and imperial stouts and things like that, so I would recommend you try those. But they became very popular on the back of their early beers that they did, and it allowed the Falkström family to continue making their living on the farm as they've done since the 1700s. In the first year they produced only 8,000 litres of beer and sold it very locally, but they now produce well over 1.1 million litres of beer per year. They've got a big Italian brew kit in this place and a production capacity of about 2.5 million litres of beer per year, as far as I can understand. But yeah, as of July 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 115 different kinds of beer. The beers that I would really recommend that you try from this brewery would be the New Sweden IPA, one of the cult classic New England IPAs here in Sweden, in my opinion. I would also recommend the Turbo IPA if you want an old school West Coaster, and the Turbo Stout as well. But they're releasing various new things these days. I've had a whole host of different styles from them actually, and then they've got their Heritage collection as well, which seems to be a mix of English and German things. The Heritage Porter is one that you can come across quite easily, so I might need to review that one at some stage as well. It's been a wee while since I've had a porter, come to think of it. But yeah, as I say, these guys are one of the older and more established craft breweries here in Sweden, so definitely worth checking out if you get the chance. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the history section. If you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this one then before we open it up. As you can see, this is quite similar to the other beers that we've had in the Heritage series from Oppigårds Bryggeri. There you can see the Oppigårds symbol at the top, and you'll also find that on the bottle cap there as well. They did, of course, used to have a star on their bottle cap and things. I've still got some of the old Oppigårds bottle caps somewhere actually. But yeah, it says on the side here, this one, it says the Hedamara Lager is brewed with classic German lager beers as the inspiration, I guess you could say, with the flavor in mind, I guess you could say. But the beer is golden in colour, has a medium strong malt aroma and a light freshness in taste. We basically ferment the beer cold and give it a long time in the tank, which gives which basically gives you a right crispy beer. It works well, it mixes well with different things, with high salt, actually, highly salted foods. But is that right? Celta. I'm not sure exactly what Celta is, but with the Oppigårds Heritage Collection, we basically want to celebrate the beer culture's heritage through going back to the roots and brewing beer that is typical in character. Hedemora, obviously, I'm not sure exactly what that would be, but yeah, in Hedemora, I think they're saying. So yeah, they basically want to celebrate the roots of beer culture and brew these traditional beers in Hedemora, which is kind of cool. So yeah, my brain's a little bit tired, so my Swedish translation skills are a bit at the moment. But yeah, so this one, as we said at the start of the video, it's a 5.3% lager beer. The malt base in this one is Pilsner malt, Vienna malt and Carapils. I think that could be quite interesting. And then the hops are Tettnanger and Saphir. So yeah, both German hops, of course. So Tettnanger usually comes in between 4 to 5% alpha acid, and that's a kind of classic one. Those come from Baden-Württemberg. Saphir is an interesting hop. It's a little bit lower in alpha acid, like 3 to 5%, but it usually gives you a little bit of kind of tangerine. The interesting thing though about the lager beers, of course, though, just to give you the definition of what a lager beer is, it's a low temperature fermentation, bottom fermenting yeast. Usually they ferment these between 8 and 12 degrees. Actually, so yeah, the one thing I do find a little bit odd about this is that it's a 330ml bottle, because I've had triple IPAs, 9% triple IPAs from Oppigårds Bryggeri released in half-litre bottles. So I really don't know where the consistency is when these guys release stuff, because they do their New England IPAs in the 330ml cans, and then the other heritage beers that I'd seen had been released in half-litre bottles. So I don't know why they would have changed this one to a 330, because this is a perfect beer for a half-litre bottle. And I'm going to complain about that, obviously, because I think lager beers should be sold in half-litres or 440s at minimum. So yeah, that's one thing I'm going to say about this. I don't know how they can release a sort of 8-9%, whatever it was, triple IPA as a half-litre, but then they released this as a 330. That to me doesn't make sense. But we'll judge them on the beer itself rather than the container, if you like. That's just me being picky. But I think I paid I've got a feeling that I paid maybe 25 Swedish kroners for this one, so that translates to €2.50, a bit more than £2 sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of $3 American for those of you watching in different parts of the world. But let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see what this one has in store for us. So let's get this beer out and into the glass. There we go. Yeah, this should hopefully be very nice. There we are. Anyway, so let me just line this up so that my OCD is happy. And as you can see, it certainly looks like a very nice lager beer, this one. So before the head disappears, we can say that this beer has poured with somewhere between a 1/2 and 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head in there. It does look very nice actually, but you can see the beer has poured a lovely kind of bright pale golden colour, this one. But yeah, head I would say very slightly creamy. It's fading away to be a very kind of thin foamy layer at the moment, but 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and I mean overall it does look very, very nice. But if we shine the light through this beer, it's got a lovely, very light kind of natural haze to it. I think that obviously there's a bit of condensation on the glass, but it's pretty clear at the same time. It's just a little bit of a natural haze. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. That determines the magnitude of your colour. 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. And then any adjuncts and barrel aging that you do to the beer will of course play a role in this as well actually, but usually you only have to care about that when you're talking about sour beers and things. So yeah, kind of interesting. But in terms of a lager beer, nothing particularly surprising about the appearance of this one. Lovely bright kind of golden colour, and a nice kind of creamy, slightly cream coloured head on this one. But yeah, nothing out of the ordinary for this one in terms of the appearance. Let's take a closer look at the aroma and see how we get on. Curious about this beer, as I said. So, oh yeah, that does smell pretty nice actually. It does smell pretty much like a kind of, it smells like a Munich Helles, to be honest with you. It's got a little bit of sweetness to it though because of the Vienna malt, to be honest with you, but it's lovely. It's very, very nice. I mean, these beers are supposed to be very straight shooting, and they're not supposed to be, you know, madly complex and things like that. And this beer really delivers on that, to be quite honest with you. So, yeah, let's try and break down that aroma then and explain it to you a little bit more. So the backbone of this beer is undoubtedly like a sort of white bready, slightly bread crusty kind of element. So yeah, the aroma of this one. The aroma of this one, I think, is really, really nice on that side of things. So yeah, a little bit of a kind of bread crusty quality, some nice smooth white bready elements in there, and yeah, it works. It does work very, very well in that sense. You can get a wee bit of a kind of very slightly brown bready note in this one. You get a little bit of a kind of slightly sweet brown bread. There's a sweet caramel in there as well, and there's also just a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing to this beer, which I can certainly appreciate. So I do like those slightly sweeter elements that you get out of this beer. So yeah, that's interesting. But yeah. So yeah, it's got a wee bit. It really, to be quite honest with you, it really the more that I smell of it, it started off with a wee bit of a kind of Helles type quality, but it really starts to lean more towards a kind of Pilsner thing. And when it's got carapils and Pilsner malt in it, that shouldn't be a surprise. I think the Vienna malt though is giving you a little bit more sweetness to it, so it's like a slightly sweet Pilsner beer, this one, rather than anything else. But Vienna malts, I've been trying quite a few microbrewed Vienna lagers recently, but yeah, you've got a lovely sort of sweeter caramel note to this one. As I say, in the middle of the nose, a little bit of a biscuity quality as you move further away from that as well. And yeah, I think it goes together really nicely. You can really smell the crispness from the Pilsner malt in this beer as well. As I've told you in previous reviews, describing Pilsner malt in terms of aroma is really annoying and quite difficult because it's more just about the freshness and the vibe that it gives the beer. But malt base, white bread, a little bit of bread crust in there, wee bit of sweet, a wee tiny bit of sweet caramel, a bit of a kind of sweeter brown bread underneath that as well, in fairness, and a wee bit of a kind of biscuity malt. And you can really smell that. You can really smell that sort of crispness from the Pilsner malt actually. But yeah, it goes together really nicely actually. The malt base in this one is pretty spot on. I think this is going to be a very nice beer to drink. Hoppy side of things then, it's kind of what you'd expect. You've got a little touch of a kind of smooth earthiness in there, which you always get from these German hops. You've got a lovely bright floral aromaticity there. Not spicy or anything, but very bright. If we compare the German hops to the Czech hops, for example, the Czech Žatec as they call it, the Czech Žatec always tends to be a little bit more kind of spicy, whereas the German ones are just very bright. But you've also got a very nice little kind of grassy component to this one as well. There's a lovely grassiness at the front of the nose with this beer. So yeah, I think it goes about its business really nicely on the green side of things. Nice bit of floral character, and also a good little bit of you've also got a really nice little bit of a kind of floral aromaticity to it as well. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in the hoppy side of things. And again, this is not unexpected, but on the fruity side of the beer, you can pick up a little bit. You can get a very slightly kind of orangey note from the Sapphire, but I think it's kind of minimal, to be honest. I've never really bought that thing with Sapphire where they say it's got a little bit of an orangey tangerine note. You can smell it a little bit, but maybe they're not using it in high enough concentrations for it to really kind of come out in the flavour of this beer actually. But yeah, for me, the fruity side of this one, it's got that typical sort of slightly peary note to it, a little bit of a kind of spicy apple kind of thing, and as I say, just a wee tiny hint of a kind of tangerine note from the Sapphire as well, but that is really quite minimal. But regardless, the aroma of this beer is pretty typical. As I say, there's a little bit of Helles quality to it because of the breadiness, or Czech Svet, I guess we could say as well, although they are more yeasty than their German counterparts. But yeah, it really comes across mainly as a sort of Pilsner beer, this one, rather than anything else. So definitely take a wee bit of time to, ponder over the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it. But yeah, I think it's about time that we try this one then. I'm really curious to see what this one has in store for us. A little bit of a brain fart there. I keep having these in these videos, just too tired, I think. But yeah. Let's taste this one then. This one is the Hedamara Lager, the Heritage Collection number 6 from Oppigårds Bryggeri in Hedemora in Dalarna County here in Sweden. Really looking forward to this one. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skull, and cheers. Oh yeah, first impression of it is definitely a bit more bready than the aroma gives you the impression of it being like. In the aroma, the Pilsner malt really takes the front, really takes the horns, if you like, whereas when you actually taste it, the Vienna malt is a lot more present. So that's kind of interesting. But I am going to say they've made a mistake with this beer in terms of not selling it in a 500, absolutely. Put that in a 500ml can or a 440 can. That's what I would recommend they do with this one. 330 of this beer just isn't quite enough because it's a very well done lager beer. This is the sort of beer that's going to leave you wanting more, to be honest with you. And I mean, stick it in a 440, charge a little bit more for it, save on the packaging. That would be my advice. But this is another very, very solid offering from Oppigårds Brewery in this one. These guys know what they're doing with these lager beers. I was impressed with the Pilsner. The Dunkel was good as well. I do hope I can re-review that at some point. And they also had a Hefeweizen, which I need to try. But this one is really, really quite solid actually. So big thumbs up to them for this. Really nice. So, yeah. As I say, it's like a slightly more biscuity and sweet Helles. Actually, that's the vibe that I really get from this beer. It's like a slightly more biscuity and sweet Helles rather than anything else. So yeah, as I say, thumbs up to Oppigårds for this. But let's try and break down the beer for you a little bit more. So straight away across the middle third and the back third of your palate, you can feel that nice smooth bready character in there, and this is the Vienna malt, so you can feel there's a little mix of a kind of white bread and slightly brown wholemeal bready sort of thing. That is the backbone of this beer. But if we focus on that middle third of the palate, then if you go to either end of that middle third of your palate, you can feel that the bread crusty characters are a little bit more kind of prominent in this one, so you can feel that coming out a little bit. And again, I like how that goes together in this beer. But on top of the bready note there, you get a very slight kind of, I don't know if it's right to describe it. It's not really right to describe it as a full-on caramel, and it's not right to describe it as a honey, if you like. It's got a little bit more of a kind of caramelly, biscuity type flavour, but it's got the consistency of honey, so you can feel that sort of sitting on top of the kind of brown, sort of brownish bready notes on top of that. So I do like how that goes together. So yeah, the malty side of things in this one is actually really well done. It's an interesting combination, and I guess when they're just calling it lager, you know, you don't have to stick to the confines of any one thing. So the blend between the Pilsner, the Carapils, and the Vienna malt in this is really quite interesting. But as I say, on top of that brown bready layer, you've got like an oval in the middle of your palate, and there's a sweet caramel in there. There's a little bit of a kind of biscuity element as well. So yeah, I do like how that goes together in this beer for sure. I mean, the flavour of this one I think is very, very nice. So yeah, on the how would we say? As I say, if you go to the dead centre of your palate, you can feel a little bit of an almost concentrated, slightly sweet caramel, but as you move further out from that, it's a little bit more kind of biscuity and McVitie's digestive like, and that sits on top of that you know, Vienna malt bready kind of character. But what you will notice is that when you go from the dead centre of your palate towards the back of that middle third of your palate, that's where you get the kind of crispy elements from the that's where you get the crispier elements from the Pilsner malts in this one, the Carapils and the just the straight up Pilsner malt. But the Pilsner malt's quite smooth in this. I do wonder if this is Swedish Pilsner malt they're using in this, because I know that the Viking maltery has a Pilsner malt and it doesn't feel quite as crisp as the German or the Czech malts that you get in this one. So I'd be curious to know about that. But yeah, I think that summarises the middle third of your palate in this beer quite nicely. So let's focus on the other parts of the palate then. Border region between middle third and back third of your palate, there's a nice little bit of a bready build up in there, some kind of more bread crusty elements. Then the base of that back third of your palate, you can feel the brown bready characters are a little bit more kind of fluffy and airy, if you like, and there's a wee touch of graininess on the very back of the palate. But on top of all of that, you can feel the more airy, yeasty components of the beer, and that sort of brown bready thing, it's just a little bit lighter, but you still get the sweetness there. So when you're starting from the back of your palate there, you can feel that the flavour just condenses down a little bit. You know, it sort of starts tall and condenses down a wee bit as you go further forward. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, that flavour just squashes down a wee bit. And then, yeah, it's just a nice kind of smooth, you know, it's got quite a dense flavour, this, in the malty side of things, which I do like. It's a slightly more bready, malty leaning lager beer, and I do like that combination of the Vienna malt and the Pilsner malt. This is quite a unique lager, at least in my perspective. From my perspective, I've been drinking a lot of these kind of beers over the last year or two, but I like this one. Certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink that again. And as I say, my only complaint is that should be a 440 or a half litre, not a 330. But yeah, anyway, putting that aside, hoppy side of the beer then. Back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it's a little touch herbal, and as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, you've got a lovely little bit of a more kind of floral aromatic sort of thing there. And as you go around the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy. There's a wee bit of a citrusy, zesty type quality to this one, which I really like as well. So yeah, the grassiness and the green component of this one is quite typical for what you'd expect of German noble hops. A nice bright floral aromaticity, not spice or anything like that, and just a bit of a lighter but still slightly zesty grassy quality to this one. But yeah, on the fruity part of the beer then, so front third of your palate, on this, on the fruity side of things then, so border region, we'll speak of this front third of your palate, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up and a wee bit of a bread crust, but the base of that front third of your palate, there's a nice smooth, again, white bready type quality there, and then on top of that you've got that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And it's kind of interesting, this one, because it is what you'd expect from these hops, but it's a little bit more oily in character than some of the other lager beers that I've had that have only used the German hops. So at the back of that front third of your palate, I'd say there's a wee bit of a slightly peary, sultana type quality almost. So yeah, wee bit of a kind of sultana type quality there on the back third of your palate. Maybe not peary, I would say actually, but as you move into the kind of front half of that front third of your palate, the fruits just get a little bit more oily. You've got a wee bit of a kind of tangerine orange in there. As I say, just a little bit of that from the sapphire. Sapphire's quite distinctive in that sense, but you also have that big oily, peary element coming out of this one, and maybe just a wee touch of a slightly spicy apple behind the very front tip of the tongue. But yeah, this is a really nice, very smooth lager beer, this one. As I say, I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink that again, but the highlight of this beer for me is the mix of the Vienna malt and the Pilsner malt. I think this one's quite unique in a sense, because normally when you get, pardon me, you know, when there's a beer with a Vienna malt in it, I would always think that, you know, it'd be a little bit darker. You've seen me reviewing some of these Vienna lagers recently, and they've been a little bit kind of darker and things, but this one obviously is a blonde lager, but I think it does work really nicely, so it gets a big thumbs up from me, this one. So yeah, awesome stuff from Oppigårds Bryggeri once again. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that. We can leave it at that for this review. I've really enjoyed it. We can leave it at that for the tasting section, as I say, not the review. But yeah, we should round off with the mouthfeel. Brain fart once again. Getting terrible these days, guys. Early onset Alzheimer's potentially. But yeah, to round off this review with the mouthfeel then. You know, this beer is light-bodied, but it's towards the top end of light-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. Like I say, it's not one of the drier lagers you're going to come across. It's got a nice wee bit of an oily character to it. The backbone of this beer, as we say, is a little bit more kind of bready and things, and I do like that, but you can tell it's all grain and it's high quality, so I do like that. So the malt base, bready in the backbone, there's a wee bit of sweetness and kind of character on top of that, and there's a wee touch of dryness comes out of it later. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I would say that this beer is probably about 15-20 IBU, no, 20 I think, about 20 IBUs. You do get a little bit of hoppy bitterness out of it later on, and the fruits are kind of nice and oily, I would say. But yeah, I do like how this beer goes about its business in that sense. So yeah, the fruity oily side of this beer as well suits it very nicely, and it's one of these beers where everything fits together really well. So one of the more bready and slightly more oily lager beers that I've had in recent times, but another very solid effort from Oppigårds Bryggeri. So thumbs up to them for that. Certainly wouldn't hesitate to, but sell it in 440s or half litres. That would be my advice. But yeah, we can leave it there. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Oppigårds Bryggeri. We will return to these guys at some point soon, I've got no doubt about that. But yeah, this one was the Hedamara Lager from their Heritage series, number 6 apparently, from Oppigårds Bryggeri in Hedemora up in Dalarna County. A very nice lager beer coming in at 5.3% ABV. So thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Oppigårds Bryggeri social media, and I will catch you guys in the next review. Number 3000 coming for you next. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you in the next review.